Hello, everyone, and welcome to another series of the FinTech Superhero Spotlight. I am so honored to have one of my good friends, Wade Arnold from Moov, the CEO of Moov, on today. Welcome, Wade.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kara.
Absolutely.
I was shocked to be included in Superhero Spotlight, but I'll take the title any day.
Hey, they say not all superheroes wear capes, though it would be cool to see you in a cape. So maybe that's some new Moov swag. Well,
Next
thank
up.
you. Thanks again for joining. The topic today that we're really going to be focusing on is banking below the surface, and really talking about the new embedded finance trend that we're seeing here. Actually, it's really global, right? But we both focus mostly on the U.S. market. So really quickly, before we get started on that topic, for those that don't know you, and I know most people probably do at this point, but can you just give a quick intro and just tell us a little bit about Moov and what you're building?
Absolutely. So at Moov, we wanted to rebuild kind of the essential building blocks or protocol level and primitive level of financial services for a cloud native world. And we've chosen to do that in a unique way in that the most complex pieces of our code base are open source, Apache 2, and we've got a pretty vibrant open source community around that. And then not everybody wants to build their own, SOC 2s and PCI compliance and AML and BSA policies. So we provide those as services that really surround those open source projects. And really our brand promises go straight to the network. So we may not have all the features of kind of the layers of legacy technologies that are out there, but it's our customer to us, to the Fedline, the clearinghouse, or Visa directly.
That's awesome. And what is that? I actually like to quickly talk about that because I think it is a key piece of embedded finance. What kind of benefit does that bring, right? Because I don't think that everyone necessarily understands the sort of middle layer of technology and how that can really constrict, what you're looking to do and the flexibility there.
For us, we wanted to build a platform, first and foremost, for developers, by developers, and really the thing that they want is really control of their future, right? So if you are building on top of a platform that's built on top of a sponsor bank that's using technology from a legacy provider that, like where are you in line to get a net new feature out of there? And there's a lot of orchestration that happens between kind of those layers of the cake between, Visa to, I won't name all the names until the actual integrator. And so we said, hey, let's do this a little bit differently. Let's start over. Let's build it in a cloud native way so that we can utilize modern programming practices, eventing systems and different things to make that developer experience better. Mm-hmm. So super focused on obviously the payments side of things, but then we also have a stored value wallet on top of that. So every single payment that goes through us goes through our ledger, and it makes things like reconciliation and returns and a lot easier for developers to kind of reason about without having to know a ton about payments.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah. So to focus a little bit on embedded finance, I think that this term is being thrown around a lot. I don't think a lot of people actually really know what it is. And so I'm going to start off with, maybe you can help us define, what do you consider embedded finance and what makes it a little different from embedded banking? And do you think there's a difference?
Yeah, I think they're both overloaded buzzwords at this point in the industry. So no question about that. But I do see them as two distinctly different things. Embedded finance to me is some of those experiences that maybe you would have with your direct banking relationship, but delivered through a different vehicle, right? You're not going to download your Chase account. That's its own experience versus a loan that's offered to you at checkout or the example I like using is just the Starbucks rewards platform. So that to me is just simply a better user experience for loyal Starbucks customers. There's nobody at Starbucks that probably is wanting to become a bank, but they do want those banking type features to have that better user experience inside of their platform. And they realize that, making that less friction in the buying process is really important to their brand and their brand promise. And it's a feature. It's not a, who they are as a company. They make coffee. Yeah. And I think we're seeing that, being replicated in all kinds of other platforms where maybe financial services happened outside of it, and they may or may not have reconciled it inside of the platform. But now to be able to just make that transaction, whether that's a loan, a payment, a store of value inside of the ecosystem or inside of the marketplace, to me, that's kind of embedded finance. And embedded finance also is what's the focus to me, or how to really kind of drill into that is what's the least effort possible, right? Because it's being brought back to the user experience. What's the least effort possible for me to interact with this? I think that's a lot different than, I have $10 million and I want to have that in a very safe and secure place. And if something were to ever happen to me, let's make sure that gets to my family members. And to me, that's embedded banking. And that's the ability where I have a CIP program, I have a next of kin, I have an SU agreement back to the state, like all these things that are really banking enabled pieces that require maybe a little bit more friction, but you get a lot more trust with it, are kind of two different things. Yeah.
No, that's a really good distinction, I think, because I don't think a lot of people are necessarily like looking at it that way, right? And how and using those terms interchangeably, but I think it is really important to make that differentiation. So what is powering this new trend of embedded finance, right? I love the Starbucks idea. What do they do really well? They make coffee. Well, some people think they make coffee well, other people don't, but I'm not going to get into that debate.
But they serve customers well, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, it's about how easy is it to buy that coffee, right? And what's that experience when I get onto their app? But what's behind all of this? Like I think a lot of people now know, like they've heard the term banking as a service. A lot of people do know Moov. But I would love to understand your view on the proliferation of this, because it is still relatively new in terms of being able to power these types of experiences.
Absolutely. So I really think there's two macro drivers to this change. And most macro events always involve consumer sentiment demanding something. Yeah. And so the first macro event to me is that large tech companies that have had the capital in order to make embedded finance inside of their applications have become wildly successful. So if you kind of, Uber or Lyft or DoorDash or Airbnb, those experiences make the transfer of value seamless inside of the applications. So you have those huge tech companies. Many of them had 1,000 software engineers that were orchestrating kind of these legacy platforms together that I had previously mentioned. The second piece is that for a lot of transactions, things like WePay, Venmo, Cash App are just a phenomenal user experience. And so when I want to move money, and I've experienced Cash App as my expectation for money movement, you can sign up for Cash App right now, and I can send you $100. And
please do, Wade. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, but as a technologist and payments, I know behind the scenes they haven't linked my bank account. They don't have my money, but you were able to get that credit almost instantaneously, and they reconciled that behind the scenes. And so that user experience is something that the consumer is really demanding. And that consumer, we in payments like to say, well, is that a business payment or is that a retail payment? Like, it's a payment, and they want money movement to be that way. So that to me is a macro trend that now if I'm building a software application in much the same way that autocomplete for search, your application felt old if you didn't have that, because Google did it for the world's information. Why can't you do it for your app? Now payments are very similar. It's just a feature that needs to work. And I don't think all those software developers want to go learn payments in order to add that feature. The second macro trend that I see happening is call it the gig economy, the sharing economy, the marketplace economy, but connecting creators of goods, whether that's YouTube stars to dress manufacturers, with the people that they actually enjoy that content, enjoy that product. And you're kind of breaking down or disintermediating like the big distribution channel, whether that's a box store or Amazon, this connection between people and the creators that are creating that good. And that's a totally different payment experience than the silo of, well, this company accepts money and this company stores money and this company disperses money. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden you need that entire flow of funds inside of your platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's an interesting space to watch for sure. I think I learned recently, the market boom, the housing market boom recently, it's really out of reach for a lot of people to buy homes. And I think there was a fintech that came along that's now allowing you and your friends to go buy a home together. And so every traditional area has this opportunity. And to your point, in that, it's going to have to be an embedded experience. That's awesome. So what do you think are some of the biggest opportunities as well as challenges? So, and I think like the opportunity you've pretty much well laid out, but I want to talk a little bit about the challenges of meeting this need, right? And, there's a lot of BaaSes that have popped up. We're all watching all the new VC moves, including Moov, right? And congrats on your round of funding. What are some of the challenges of meeting these needs? Who do you think will be the winners that rise to the top? And then on that, how do you differentiate across the other BaaSes that are out there?
Yeah, so I mean, we see the other people in the marketplace, and I think it's a really big market that's maturing. Yeah. When I talk about these two-sided marketplaces, I think that's where Moov is very unique. We're really trying to help the developer that is building a vertical SaaS company that has 1,000 or 10,000 businesses on top of their platform. You're not going to go get all 10,000 of those businesses to go sign up for a at one bank in order to make the integration easy and simple. And so at Moov, we actually abstract ourselves from a bank in order to make that happen, but you don't need to have a personal, or a business relationship with that. So we think that's unique and different. Most developers don't want to know about payments, let alone the AML and BSA policies of each individual bank and how they work. And then the other piece that we think is super unique is just rebuilding it from scratch, which allows us to really have pricing and reliability and feature development that are on our shoulders. So that's good and bad. The other companies out there have a lot of features because maybe the software has been around for 20 years. We've been around for a year, so we have fewer features. But the features we have work at web scale and work the way that a modern software developer would expect them to.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a key piece, right? Is that you're kind of building it right from the ground up, and maybe it's features will come, right? You guys are working very fast to bring those to market, but it's about how you build it that's the most important, and how a developer actually interacts with that. So two more questions for you. So one is, you mentioned the bank, right? And I think that, I think in our podcast together a couple months ago, we talked about, at the end of the day, we still need regulation, right? The banks still have to be involved. But I think today there's, yes, the list is growing in terms of the banks that will work with folks like Moov and BaaSes, but it's still relatively small. And I would love to understand what you think, as more banks are looking at getting into this space and supporting these types of businesses, what's a good profile for a bank that will get into this? Like, what are you seeing in terms of, is it like purely about risk tolerance and innovation? Are there other types of structures that the bank might have that really prepares them well to work under this model?
We see the bank that doesn't consider fintech a threat, but as a distribution channel, as a cheaper way to acquire customers, deposits, and non-interest income.
Yeah.
If that's the mindset, then they're probably well suited to maybe expand their compliance team in order to partner with fintech companies. That's a lot different than if there's mega mergers going on and they're shutting down their partnerships with fintechs in order to keep their brand front and center. So I think that's probably the first decision point for a financial institution is, do I want everyone to know that I'm First State Bank and trust and no other way other than through my branch door can you become a customer. And I think that is a safe and a real business model that way as well. But that's kind of the major differentiator. Banks ultimately have an efficiency ratio that they have to hit. Yep. And those ratios are, 2 orders of magnitude different than a startup's. And so their ability to really use capital for at-risk ideas, at-risk technologies is difficult. So we see, the more successful fintech banks, finding partners in order to bring those solutions to market.
That's fantastic. Awesome. All right. And if there is one thing that you could currently change about the U.S. industry, whether it's regulation, tech, the world is your oyster, what would you change today?
Yeah, I think that a fintech charter would be super exciting for doing payments and store of value. Yeah. It's somewhat unclear some of the rules that you have to do in order to pull that off. Yeah. Are you a money service business and you have to deal with 50 states that are doing a better job of kind of consolidating how they view the MSB space, but there's probably a national charter at some point that would really unleash and accelerate some of that innovation. And you could take away lending, or you could take away a bunch of other things inside of that charter to make it easier for tech companies to be able to help their end users.
Yeah, well, we've seen it work. We've seen it work in Europe, right? And I think we could definitely benefit from it here. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think the Republicans and the Democrats are shaking hands and deciding on that today.
Yeah.
So maybe we won't hold our breath.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. Awesome. Well, we're almost coming up on time. Anything else that you'd love to share with the audience? If you had a crystal ball, what are you seeing in the next 5 years? Anything on your mind?
For me, we think this open source community that we've developed is really unique. Most of our competitors actually use our open source projects, which is like the opposite of traditional financial services. So we have over 2,000 people in slack.moov.io that are builders, developers, contributors to code and processes. So, please check that out and join it. The other thing is in September, we have a conference called FinTech DevCon, and it's not to sell anything about Moov. It's for builders, by builders, and it's really to share information and get to know other people that are kind of at that grassroots level of building. And they could be at a startup, they could be the chief software engineer at Cash App, and everything in between. So we're very excited about FinTech DevCon. Check it out, fintechdevcon.io. And Kara is actually a speaker. So we're excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be there. I think it will be one of my first in-person conferences, and I couldn't be more excited to both share some information with the group, but also learn so much from the group, because there's just so many great minds who are going to be there. So I definitely recommend going if you can. So, well, thank you, Wade. Really appreciate the time today. I always love our conversations, and look forward to speaking again soon.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
All right.